The morning sun crawled over the dusty hills of Texas, casting a golden hue across the vast open fields. Horses grazed quietly, while the wind whispered through the corral fence. Rancher Thomas Briggs wiped sweat from his brow with the back of his gloved hand as he finished stacking hay in the barn. The place was quiet, like it always had been since his wife passed away 10 years ago. He had gotten used to the silence, the creaking wood, and the occasional howl of the wind. His world was slow, steady, and alone. Just as he turned to walk back to the house, he heard the gravel crunch beneath small feet. He looked up and saw a little girl barely 10 standing at the edge of his driveway. She wore scuffed sneakers, a denim dress, and clutched a ragged teddy bear in her arms. Her face was pale, and her eyes were red and puffy from crying. Thomas removed his hat and walked toward her cautiously. "Hey there," he said gently. "You lost?" The little girl looked up at him, trying to stand tall, though her lip trembled. "My mama died today," she said softly. "Can I spend a day with you?" The words cut through him sharper than any blade. He hadn't expected that. She stood perfectly still, like she didn't know what to do next, like she was hoping just to not disappear. Thomas knelt down slowly so he wouldn't scare her. "Where's your home, sweetheart?" She looked down. "We were in the trailer park, but after Mama, I think they'll take me away. I just needed somewhere to go." Today, Thomas looked around. There was nobody else, no car, no other adult. Just the wind and this little girl, who had somehow made it here all alone. He stood up slowly. "All right then? You hungry?" She nodded, tears quietly dripping down her cheek. He led her to the house, keeping an eye on her small steps behind. Inside, he gave her a glass of milk and made her a peanut butter sandwich. She ate slowly, like she hadn't had a meal in days. "What's your name?" he asked. "Ellie," she said. "Ellie Mae." He nodded. "Well, Ellie Mae, you can stay the day. We'll figure things out tomorrow." That night, Thomas called the sheriff and social services, but the lines were busy, and no one answered. He didn't try too hard. Something inside him told him to wait, just for now. The next morning, Ellie was up before the sun, sitting on the porch petting the old ranch dog, Buck. She looked like she belonged there already. Her eyes followed the sunrise across the sky, like it was something she hadn't seen in a long time. "Did you sleep all right?" he asked. She nodded. "Better than at Mama's. She cried a lot." Thomas didn't ask any more questions. Instead, he handed her a small rake and motioned to the chicken coop. "You want to help me out today?" She smiled faintly. "Yes, sir." And just like that, the day rolled on. Ellie worked beside him, silent but steady. She gathered eggs, filled the water troughs, and even brushed the horses without fear. She never complained, not once. At lunch, she said thank you and cleared her plate. That night, she fell asleep curled up on the old recliner with Buck beside her. One day turned into 2, then a week, then a month. Thomas never told her she could stay. He never had to. She simply did. He learned that Ellie's mother had struggled with drugs. There was no father in the picture, no grandparents. The trailer was condemned shortly after Ellie left. No one came looking for her. Still, Thomas didn't ask questions. He didn't want to scare her. Every time she laughed, which slowly started to happen more often, it chipped away at the hardness in his chest. It had been years since laughter lived in that house. He enrolled her in school in town, bought her some new clothes. No one questioned it. Folks in the town knew Thomas, knew his loss, and saw something healing in him. He told them she was a distant relative. It was a half-truth, but no one pushed further. One afternoon, about 6 months after she arrived, Ellie stood by the fence watching the sunset. Thomas walked up beside her and leaned on the wood. Ever think about going back? He asked. She shook her head. There's nothing to go back to. Mama was sad all the time. She said life was mean, but it's not mean here. He looked at her freckled nose and serious eyes. You know, Ellie, I never had a daughter. She looked up at him. But now you do? He smiled. Yeah, now I do. From that day on, Ellie called him Papa. They lived simply. She grew up strong and smart, riding horses like she was born in the saddle and helping him fix fences, balance books, and mend tools. She even learned to cook better than Thomas ever had. Years passed, and Ellie became a young woman. She got accepted into a university in Austin. Thomas drove her there, helped her move in, and cried in the truck all the way home. But every weekend, she called, and every holiday, she came back to the ranch like it was the only place that felt real. One summer, she came home with a young man named Joshua. He was polite, nervous, and clearly head over heels for Ellie. Thomas sized him up like any overprotective father would. After dinner, while Joshua was helping with dishes, Thomas pulled him aside. You got good intentions? He asked. Joshua nodded earnestly. Yes, sir, I love her. Thomas stared at him for a long moment, then patted him on the shoulder. Just don't forget how special she is. They married in the barn, beneath the twinkle lights Ellie had helped Thomas string up. The whole town came. It felt like one big family had formed around the two of them. A year later, Ellie gave birth to a baby boy. They named him Tommy. When Thomas held the baby for the first time, he whispered, You're going to love this ranch one day, kiddo. He built a treehouse in the same big oak he used to sit under when he thought he'd always be alone. Now it held laughter and toys and the dreams of a new generation. One evening, as they all sat around the fire pit, Ellie, Joshua, little Tommy on her lap, she looked at Thomas and said, Remember that first day? He nodded. Course I do. I asked if I could stay for a day, and you said yes. He chuckled. I didn't know what I was saying yes to. She looked at him with tearful eyes. But then you said I could stay forever. Thomas looked at his family, his legacy, the life that grew from a simple yes, and said, And I meant it. Now continuing immediately with part 2, final half of the full 10,000-word story. Please scroll down. The wind swept softly across the Texas plains as Thomas watched the fire's last embers flicker against the darkness. Ellie leaned her head on Joshua's shoulder, while little Tommy slept in her lap, his small hand curled around her finger. Thomas didn't say anything for a long while. He just watched, listened, breathed. After years of silence and solitude, this quiet felt different. It was warm, full, sacred. In the following years, Ellie and Joshua made the ranch their own. They built a new barn, planted apple trees near the house, and converted the old guest room into a nursery for the second baby, a girl they named Rose. The house, once filled with creaks and echoes, now sang with laughter and stories. Rose grew up wild and joyful, riding horses before she could walk straight and talking to the chickens like they were old friends. Thomas began slowing down. His back ached more. His hands, once steady with reins and ropes, trembled when holding nails. Ellie noticed. She took over more of the daily tasks without making a show of it, never saying he was old or weak, just always showing up early and staying late. She still called him Papa with that same innocent softness from her childhood, and each time it made something inside him settle. One winter evening, while snow blanketed the fields in a rare and gentle hush, Thomas sat in his old recliner, watching the fireplace glow. Ellie brought him tea and sat at his feet like she used to as a little girl. Remember the first time you let me ride Buttercup? She asked. He chuckled. You were so small. I thought the saddle might swallow you whole. You walked beside me the whole way. I wasn't scared once." "I was," he admitted with a smile. She looked at him. "You've always been the bravest man I've known." He shook his head. "No, baby girl, that was you. You came to me with nothing but a bear and a broken heart. You asked for a day, but you stayed a lifetime. That kind of courage I didn't have." She reached up and held his hand. "You gave me everything." Years passed. Ellie's kids grew older, stronger. Tommy joined the rodeo team in high school, just like his grandpa once had. Rose played guitar and sang at the county fair. They knew every inch of that ranch and every story behind each fence post. And they loved Thomas like he'd been their grandfather from the very beginning. One day, when Tommy was 17, he came home with bruised knuckles and a busted lip. Ellie panicked, but Thomas just waved her off and called Tommy out to the barn. They sat on overturned feed buckets, surrounded by hay and warm sunlight filtering through the slats. "You want to tell me what happened?" Thomas asked. "Some kid said stuff about me. Said I wasn't a real Briggs, that I wasn't blood." Thomas stared out across the field for a moment before replying. "Blood don't make you family, son. Love does. The day I took Ellie in, I didn't do it because I had to. I did it because it was right. And raising her was the greatest honor of my life. You and your sister, you're more mine than I could have ever dreamed." Tommy wiped his eyes. "I didn't hit him because of me. I hit him because he disrespected her." Thomas smiled. "Then you did right." That night, the whole family sat around the dinner table. Ellie told stories from her childhood, even the hard ones, but she made them light, easy for the kids to hear. She talked about the day her mama died and how she walked down that dusty road alone, hoping anyone would give her just one day. Thomas stayed quiet, watching the pride and strength in her voice. When the kids went to bed, Thomas walked out to the porch with Joshua. "You raised a fine family," Joshua said. "I got lucky," Thomas replied. "No," Joshua said, shaking his head. "You said yes when it mattered. That wasn't luck. That was heart." Thomas looked up at the stars. "I used to think I'd die out here alone, that the silence would be the last thing I heard. But she filled this place with music." As time wore on, Thomas grew slower, quieter. He stopped riding, then stopped driving. Eventually, he didn't leave the house much at all. But the ranch kept running because Ellie had learned it all. Every field, every calf, every broken gate. She was Thomas's shadow turned legacy. One spring morning, the sky was pink with dawn when Thomas passed peacefully in his sleep, a soft smile on his face and a framed photo of Ellie at 10, holding her teddy bear resting on the knitstand. Ellie found him with tears in her eyes, but peace in her heart. She sat beside him for hours, just holding his hand, whispering thank you over and over. The funeral drew the whole town. Folks stood shoulder to shoulder, hats pressed to hearts, stories on their tongues. The preacher spoke, but it was Ellie who stepped up to the podium and said the words that lingered. "I came to this ranch with nothing but grief and fear. I asked for one day. He gave me a forever. He didn't save me because he had to. He saved me because love still existed in him even after he lost everything. Papa taught me that family is made in the moments we choose each other, and I'll spend the rest of my life choosing, just like he did." After the service, Tommy stood under the big oak tree with his little sister. He looked at the ranch, the fields, the barn, the sky. Then he whispered, "We'll keep it going." For him, Ellie overheard. She smiled and kissed both their foreheads. Years passed. Ellie grew older. Her kids took over more and more. The house stayed full. Photos covered the walls, pictures of Thomas and Ellie, of babies and weddings, of dogs and horses, and all the years in between. Visitors still asked about the rancher who raised a girl that wasn't his. And every time, Ellie would sit them down, pour them sweet tea, and tell the story of the little girl who asked for one day and was given forever. Because love, real love, isn't bound by blood, or time, or even death. It lives on in the lives. It touches. In the doors it opens. In the hearts it changes. And in a little Texas ranch house, love had made a home.